afternoon. Are you thrilled to be following Calvin's? We've got to keep the spirits up now, everyone. Rousing, okay, think rousing. Okay, so I'd love to, as I said, make this session really interactive, and I've got loads of questions to get started. Obviously, I wouldn't be a very good journalist if I didn't, but we also want to hear yours, so please do keep them coming through. And I think it's a really interesting time to be having this discussion, isn't it? And I know I wrote a story for the paper back in October, based on some research from NatWest, which found that the number of large companies saying that sustainability is a high priority had fallen to its lowest level since 2020. And the timing of the research actually coincided with Rishi Sunak rowing back on all those net zero pledges, which was very helpful indeed. So do we think that, frankly, does anyone care? Has it fallen off the to-do list? So let's start really macro and then we'll kind of focus in on the KBB sector. So I would like to come to Tom first.
Wow, so has it fallen off the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think certainly there seems to be less momentum at a political level.
Mm-hmm.
The rowing back and the political opportunity that I think the Prime Minister identified in the West Drayton by-election of a reaction against the personal sacrifices that individuals are being asked to make in the name of sustainability policies is something that has been picked up on as an opportunity. In terms of corporations, though, and the bathroom manufacturers that are my members, I don't think, as a sector, we've taken the foot off the gas at all, actually. I think there's the slide during Calvin's presentation there about doing the right thing. I think genuinely, as a sector, most of our members are in that place. Just for any of you that don't know the BMA, we're a trade body of around 60 corporates, many of whom are in the room, pleased to see. And a number of years ago, 5 years ago, on my arrival at the BMA, we've been talking about sustainability for many a year. Had a unified water label, which was an initiative for the association. But actually, on speaking to members, they said, we want this to be right front and centre of what the association does for us. So it's been our strategic priority ever since then, and certainly despite all of the challenges that we experienced during the pandemic, the work has continued at pace.
Okay, and Phil, I can see you nodding along there. Do you agree? It's not something that's fallen off the to-do list as we focus on keeping the lights on, frankly, over the last few years, which in itself has become more expensive.
Yeah, I think for businesses, there have been other things to worry about. I would certainly agree. I think at the same time, consumers have been worrying about different things. So whether it's cost of living, or whether it's Brexit, whether it's COVID, or all those things that the challenges that we had. But I know from a Triton perspective, the research that we've undertaken says consumers are putting it right at the top of their wish list, if you like. They're absolutely looking at sustainability features, functions, and perhaps some of that was driven by COVID. So getting hold of product. Using less energy, using less water in a cost of living crisis has all played into that arena, I think.
So sometimes it goes hand in hand with being more efficient and saving money, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what about your perspective, David? Do you think, you're from the comms world, right? Has it? I mean, my inbox is just a mess of people telling me about they've become a B Corp now. By the way, don't ever pitch me a story about being a B Corp, but. Businesses still want to shout about this stuff, don't they? Is it a differentiator in the way that it once was?
Well, I think businesses have got a lot more of the solutions. So businesses, as Tom said, haven't deprioritised it at all. I think the difference has come that sustainability has become much more hand in hand with energy efficiency because of the cost of living crisis. So consumers are asking for more energy efficient solutions. They are pleased when they are sustainable as well, but I think it's an energy efficiency perspective. I think you've got to lead from a governmental level and give people the opportunity to be more sustainable. People are sustainable in their heads, I think, and people want to be, but I think actually you have to drive policy at the very top to make sure that the wider set of consumers will follow that path. I don't think they do naturally all by themselves. And installers are dead keen to learn more, so we do the installer show and we find that there is a lot of interest in more sustainable products at the event, and we see that reflected on the digital platforms we do as well.
And we know that installers are key to the decisions that are made by homeowners, right? So we heard earlier that 40% of homeowners said the bathroom installer had the greatest influence over the choice of product. But BiKBBI's installer survey found that 55% of installers feel the industry is not doing enough to reduce its impact on the environment. So there's clearly a bit of a disconnect there. So what's your job, Phil? Are you doing a good enough job at communicating with the installers? Not you personally.
Clearly not. Not if 55% of them are saying that we're... No, I think that squarely sits with us as manufacturers for sure in getting that message to the installers about what sustainability looks like. You know, I think a lot of people don't really understand where to start. What does that sustainability journey look like? So I think it's absolutely on us to help in that communication message. I also think that as consumers drive more attention to sustainability, installers will be more willing, even more willing than they probably are today, to learn and perhaps even bust some of the myths that I think a lot of people consider sustainability as a difficult topic to talk about and will ultimately end up costing the consumer more money. It doesn't always have to be that way. I think that there is definitely a story to sell, a bit like we were talking about cost of living crisis, just going back to that example, whereby if you can save energy and save water, and you know there are benefits in the long run for the consumer in sustainability. So, but yes, absolutely, we've got to play a key part in getting that message and education to the installer.
Tom, you look like you want to add something.
Yeah, I think I'm both agreeing and disagreeing with Phil, really, in that I think there are people out there that want to oversimplify sustainability, and you and I both have seen people in the marketplace really pushing the fact that they are now a carbon neutral business. Well, if you're just a sales operation with an office, it's very, very easy to be carbon neutral tomorrow. Reaching net zero, which is perhaps the thing that they're trying to infer, is very, very difficult if you're in an international supply chain with a complex range of inputs. So that complexity is sometimes lost by the convenient badging that we used in an attempt to communicate better on sustainability. So I think that there is a role for us to educate around some of the complexities. And the theme of the conference around collaboration is absolutely key. Damien and my organisation need to be working together in lockstep to make sure that we're consistent with the messaging.
Because you do get a lot of greenwashing, right? And as a journalist, I roll my eyes a lot at some of the stuff I get sent, and as soon as you start to unpick it, it all falls apart. What would you say, David? Because obviously this is very much your domain, right?
Yeah, and I think the collaboration point is key because, we've heard about the importance of the installer, but it's not doing that in isolation. You've got manufacturers in there, you've got the retail chain in there, you've got designers, local authorities, housing associations, governments. I think the whole sustainability mix is important, that everyone's got the opportunity to connect and learn from each other. We see that there's a lot of thirst for information from the installers in particular. We did a reader survey and 66% said the place they most trust to get information is from the manufacturer. So I do think that there is a big job that manufacturers can do to provide that sort of education for installers in what is possible and how that can empower them to tell the story to the consumer, because ultimately a lot of them will be influencing consumers in some of the choices that they do make. But I do think it is about trying to bring everybody together, and the more we do that, the better.
And so it's, again, that point around collaboration, because that was going to be my next question, was about whose responsibility it is to upskill the installers, because in the BiKBBI installer survey, again, very similar to what you just quoted there, 70% said they were interested in training and development for themselves and their teams, but how do you access that? Is it incumbent upon them to be being proactive about their own training and development? Is it the manufacturers? Is it the trade associations? Or is it just everybody coming together?
I think it's got to be a mix. I think everyone plays their part. I mean, I think that, when you, like we do, if we're a media organisation, the part of your purpose is trying to bring people together. And because everybody's got different skill sets and different ways that they can help. The associations can do a great job. The individual manufacturers can. I think for us as an organiser, it's you put a platform together where people can bring those different bits of expertise to it. That's part of it, but everyone has to kind of get behind that. And I think if people do, you can make great things happen.
It's the kind of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink type analogy, right? So, Phil, without wanting to put you on the spot, and then Tom, sorry, we'll come straight to you. Without wanting to put you on the spot, but I'm going to. So what do you do in that kind of education piece, working with installers? Do you work with them directly?
Yeah, so we work with installers directly. So exhibitions and the like, we would attend on a regular basis to try and get messages about products and sustainability through to that installer base. We have trainers who work within our business that will go out and work on site with installers to gen them up on the latest technology and how to correctly install, especially if it's new technology. So we're trying what we can. I'm recalling the conversation we had just briefly earlier before Calvin's session, where we were talking about alternative ways to get the message across, and I think that's very relevant here as well. So I think collectively, if I was being critical of us all, we probably resort to what would be deemed as old methods of communication. So I think we can do a better job at using the more, let's call them modern tools or social media, which we do to a degree, but I think we can absolutely improve in that, just trying to make the messaging more relevant and more accessible, I think.
And we'll come back to that point, actually. Tom, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, on the point of technology and the different options, something that we're collaborating on right now with the BiKBBI through the education group is making our Bathroom Academy available to installers in BiKBBI's membership, for example, which is an online learning resource. But I think the training provision is there. Most manufacturers have some form of CPD offering. What isn't there is the capacity for installers to actually do it en masse. So, we've heard today about how busy you guys and girls are on a daily basis. Making the space to be able to do CPD is really tough. I mean, something that we're quite keen to see is some form of mandatory registration of plumbers and installers with a compulsory CPD element to it, so that actually there's some assurance as a consumer that the person that you're trusting to do your important bathroom project that you've been saving up for a long time for actually is in the know about the latest technologies, about the best methods to do and install.
And so specifically on sustainability, we've kind of talked around it when we're talking about technology platforms and social media and stuff, but is some of it a generational thing? So as we get the younger installers coming through, the younger homeowners, if they can ever afford a home, if they stop buying avocado on toast, but is that something that's going to change with the generations? What's your view, David?
I think you get people that are of all generations that have got different attitudes to sustainability. I've seen young people that are not very clued up on it and don't do a lot, and some that do. I think the point is you have to make that information more accessible. So you have to look at how you're communicating it. So if you're just relying on talking to people of my generation, you're going to fall down. Whereas if you think about how you're communicating those messages out to kids and to either apprentices, students, younger than that. So keeping abreast of the changing nature of social media and how people are consuming that media, where are they getting their news from? Because otherwise we can preach very easily to the converted and not think about how to tell the story to a slightly more diverse set of people.
Phil, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was thinking about, I attended a similar conference of AMDIA who got mentioned earlier. There was a lady who was facilitating that who talked about some research that she'd undertaken with teenagers, so 14, 15-year-old kids at school. And they talked about product selection. What is the most important thing when you're thinking about a product? And recyclability was top of the list. And that probably gives you an indication of how they're thinking very differently about that whole life cycle of that product. So not how much did it cost, not what tech was involved. They're thinking about that circularity, which I just thought was incredible. So I'd absolutely agree. I think there'll definitely be a change as the younger generations come through to a more sustainable lifestyle, whatever that might look like.
And David, you were saying that you have to speak to all the generations, and that some people are. But my sense as a journalist is that there is definitely a shift in the generations. And Sophie, I don't want to put you on the spot. However, Just to kind of give us an indication, is sustainability something you're really interested in?
Yeah, it's definitely something that there's a whole now section within our college courses that do involve sustainability. We have to learn about the methods used 50 years ago, the methods used now, and the ones in the future. Like the company I work at, we do all gas, but we're now all having to go on air source courses, things like that. Or we're learning about using this tap rather than the other one. Because we're being told we're the generation, we've got to learn three phases of things, so everybody, so we'll...
I think you were doing a grand job, but yeah, no, and that's really reassuring to hear, right? So that should be coming through in the next generations entering the KBB sector.
There is an onus on everyone in the sector, though. The research which Jane talked about earlier, one of the findings of it was that installers under 30 are the most likely to speak to their customers about the sustainability credentials of the products that they're installing. But they're also the group which is most likely to report resistance from their consumers and therefore a difference in the product choice that they finally make. So, we as the sector supporting them really need to instill them with the confidence to be able to really take that forward and deliver the sustainable products that are going to make a difference.
And that confidence piece is key, isn't it? Because if they've only worked with the same shower or whatever for the last 10 jobs they've done, they're confident fitting that. But if it's a new sustainable alternative, then you need to make sure they feel well equipped to be able to go and do the job.
Yeah, familiarity with individual products is, by a factor of about 50%, the most key factor in any installer, regardless of age, selecting a product. So it's about double the next kind of product criteria.
Yeah, it's what we see in a lot of the visitor research to the events as well. Just that willingness to go to be able to understand the new technologies, gaining more confidence with it. When you've gained more confidence with it, you're much more happy to recommend it to a customer and feel like you're, again, that empowerment then. So yeah, I think it's about having that education and having a forum where you can really take advantage of it.
The air source heat pump example is probably a really good one, where that's partially been driven by legislation as well. But clearly there's a lot in the media around how there is a lack or not enough air source heat pump installers that are around, and therefore it almost doesn't matter how sustainable we want to be if we're pushing that technology and there aren't the installers around to install it or trained to install it, then you get a bit of an impasse, don't you?
So where do we speak to installers? How do we communicate these messages? We've talked again about the various kind of platforms and using social media, but it's not like speaking to office-based workers like me. Not that I answer my emails anyway, but they're not likely to be sat at a desk answering emails all day or necessarily picking up the phone or belonging to some online community. Maybe they are, but what's the best way of speaking to this audience? Got any tips up your sleeve?
I'm not going to say the complete open goal of saying go to installer show, because that's silly, but I mean, partly we'll say that because in the sense that the event and the visitor base that's coming along to it is really, it's grown by 10 times in the last 5 years. So trade shows play a part, events like this play a massive part as well. But I think the sort of peer-to-peer learning as well, I think that sometimes, certainly from a lot of installers we talk to, that they're really interested to see what other installers are doing. So whether they do that through following them on whatever social media platform they want to follow them on, those have really grown in popularity. And we work with quite a lot of influencers, they hate being called that, but ambassadors that will talk about best practice. A lot of them get really excited when they come to the event if they go, I follow him on TikTok or whatever it is.
And how about you, Phil? Have you got any ambassadors or social media influencers on your books?
It's something we have been looking at because, as mentioned earlier, I think social media is just playing such a key part. You almost do get that celebrity status, and we have worked with a group of installers when we launched our most recent shower, which was really useful actually. So working with them through the stages of developing that product, which also helps because they then go on and promote that product, and that's been really insightful and useful, beneficial to us as an organisation, but no ambassadors just yet.
Now, do we have any questions from the floor? Stony silence. Oh,
It's not so much a question. It's to reinforce what you guys are saying, really. My wife set up, 3 years ago, under the Unified Water Label, a schools project under the leaders of the water label. She has been inundated this year, i.e. this new term, with schools approaching her to come in and to share it. The kids are so engaged. This is primary school kids. It's mind-blowing. Some of the posters, some of the art that they're creating. So I think we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much. We've got a job to do, but we're actually doing more than we probably realise.
And that's another good point, isn't it, about starting young, you know, kind of engaging people in the topic. I've got a 7 and 4-year-old, you know, my 7-year-old comes and turns the tap off if I'm brushing my teeth and I don't turn it off in between. So she's already perhaps more engaged than I am. But is that something else, you know, related against those younger generations coming through?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it again in recent products that we've launched, trying to change behaviour, and kids naturally react to that as well as any generation. So you see them, you know, simple things like egg timers in the shower, or some way of encouraging them to be more conscious about how they shower. So you can absolutely see in the young generation there, almost as we gamify things, I think that will become more and more relevant to them.
And what about, so Tom, you alluded earlier to the kind of role of legislation. You know, is it a case of, particularly with sustainability in the sector, kind of self-regulating before, you know, there are more rules that we have to follow, and again, that we haven't been privy to?
I think there's all sorts of opportunities for the government to kind of basically piggyback on the good work of organisations like the BMA and BiKBBI and CIPHE for that matter, the Plumbers Institute. You know, it hasn't got to be difficult to do mandatory registrations. The institutions already exist, the infrastructure already exists. Just that extra level of kind of nudge from government to push towards mandatory registration, I think could achieve really great things.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Phil? Do you kind of fear regulation, or do you think as an industry it might kind of help to galvanise other players that aren't perhaps doing as much as Triton are?
Yeah, I think legislation and guidance will always help, I believe. I think it sets the playing field out and actually pushes for, you know, as Calvin said, doing the right thing. That's ultimately what we're all trying to achieve on our sustainability journey. So if legislation helps with that, and I believe it can do, then absolutely we're all for that.
Excellent. Well, let's wait and see what happens post the general election, right? Michelle says we have some questions. So you're all very shy, clearly. You don't want to put your hands up, but you've sent them in over the Q&A platform. So let's see. How can manufacturers cooperate to present a sustainability package rather than a list of individual products? That's a really interesting question. So he's asked that to all of you, but who would like to take that first? Phil?
Package. Yeah.
Would you work with other manufacturers to kind of put together a suite of, best-in-class products, I guess?
Absolutely. So I guess selfishly I'd look within, so Triton's part of a group called Norcross. We're actively looking at how we can collectively look into our product portfolios to generate the most sustainable solution that you can in showering. That's not solely a Triton product, or another part of the group is Merlin, or there are various others. So I think it's a great idea and a great shout to be able to present that package to consumers and installers alike, especially if you can then articulate the saving that potentially offers, and that could either be in the long run or when the product is purchased.
And what about you, Tom? Do you agree? And I think it goes back to actually something Calvin said about don't be afraid to wear the other team's strip. So otherwise, I think historically maybe there'd have been a fear about cannibalisation or whatever. Would it be dangerous for your business model? But actually collaboration could help everyone.
I think that the sector's actually got a really great history of collaboration. For businesses that are also fiercely competitive with one another, actually we can get together and do good things. And certainly in the commercial washroom space, we're putting together a document which is around the optimum washroom, which covers off sustainability, among other factors like hygiene and so on. There used to be something called the Water Technology List, which the Department of Business and Trade looked after, that identified the most water-efficient technologies and basically made them the products of choice in public procurement. But in their infinite wisdom, they got rid of that. So perhaps reinventing the wheel is necessary.
And whilst, Michelle, if you can come back down and unlock your phone, because I'm afraid it's locked itself and we haven't done a face swap, so I can't unlock it. But David, is there kind of, a comms value in working together with other brands as well?
I think so. I think it's often, we see that people do look out for sort of membership association because they're sometimes representative of what they would say around sustainability. As a topic, so BMA members or BiKBBI members, so that badge often looked out for as what collectively that organisation is representing.
Great stuff. All right, well, our last question this morning, gosh. Laura. So Laura asked to Phil, as you've mentioned, the next generation are keen on choosing products that are more sustainable, but have you found it's a challenge as a manufacturer meeting the demands of creating sustainable products while maintaining affordable pricing and utilising the technologies that are currently available? How do you tackle that conversation with installers on sustainability versus price, and how receptive have they been? So I guess that's two slightly different questions. The first is about your own business model, I guess. And it's a really good one.
So it is a challenge,
yeah,
without a shadow of a doubt. So for those of you that will know Triton products, we market leaders in electric showers. So a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, hold on a minute, you're putting all these plastic boxes on walls, and how can that be sustainable?" That's our challenge. That's what we're trying to drive for. I guess my response always is, we're on a journey to improve. So we have recently introduced recycled materials into that plastic casing, such that we're taking steps forward. It's not perfect, but we also have to take in the other part of that equation, which is cost. So I'm sure we could generate something that was made out of titanium or recycled metals, but it'd be 50 times the cost. That's not commercially viable right now, but that's absolutely where we're trying to drive the agenda, is looking at every individual aspect of the product to understand how we can make it more sustainable. And I think I go back to my comment earlier, which is a lot of people think that more sustainable is more cost. We've found actually in lots of different areas, both internally within the business and in the manufacture of the product, that it doesn't always have to be. Sometimes it is, and we're back to doing the right thing and making those tough decisions, which is we've got to do this. But sometimes it's made a bit easier by not always having a cost consequence. And
it can sometimes be initially up front more expensive, right? But longer term over the use of the product save you money. Look, I'm doing your job for you. Tom, I can see you're practically jumping off your seat because you want to add something. Please do.
No, I think that's an amazing question. It's really the nub of the issue. And the example that was springing to my mind was leaky loos. So Emily kindly mentioned the Get Lavvy Savvy campaign, which we did, which was an attempt to kind of just nudge people towards maintenance behaviours on their toilets. But actually, there are products now on the market that have come forward very recently that solve to a large extent the leaky loos issue. Whether those products are going to be adopted is entirely different question. So that they exist, they might cost a little more, but more to the point, they're new. They're different from what installers are used to, so are they going to adopt them? And I don't know what the answer to that question is, so it is a fabulous question, and if we can crack it, then we're going to make great strides on sustainability.
I think there sometimes is the upfront cost. That's where we can be helped as a country through government. You know, we've seen the impact of things like the boiler replacement schemes on heat pumps has increased the uptake. And when the Green Deal was first talked about, you know, we saw an uptake in solar and people taking more of an interest in insulating more correctly. But I think sometimes you have to put a bit of a nudge in the right direction for people, and then they will really take it on board and really sort of work out that actually this is a massive long-term benefit. Because cost saving over a period of time is often clearer to understand, why you often get the uptake in sort of local authorities, housing associations quicker than you do in domestic properties where the upfront cost is always a bit of a burden. So I think that needs to be looked at.
all about giving the right signals, right? So not rowing back on your net zero pledges, for example, would be doing the opposite. Right, give us a reason to be cheerful, quickly, each of you, on sustainability. It's always good to finish on a positive note, right? So, Tom, reason to be cheerful on sustainability in the KBB sector.
Loads of really, really good, innovative products coming to market in the next 12, 18 months, and you can see them all at David's show.
So have you just covered off all 3 points?
On the Triton stand, am I?
But anything to add, Phil?
No, I completely agree. I think there's so much activity from a lot of the KBB manufacturers that we are absolutely pushing the agenda. I think we can have a real impact because it's such an area of energy and water consumption. You know, it's a high consumption within the home. So I think all of that activity will help mount up and deliver a really good outcome.
David, final word. Make it a good one.
Tom kind of said it for me there, but I think I think the products are there, the innovation is there, and the platforms are there. I think it's just taking that next step and just telling the story.
Well, what a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, Tom, Phil, and David. What a brilliant panel.